G'day, it's Dan here. Welcome back to another session with the Ruleset Wizard. We're going to continue working on our lists. This time we're going to work on the skill list, and we're going to set it up so that it stays in sync with the stats and it does all the calculations to set the skill base for us. We have a quick look at the character sheet. We can see our skills. We have a name, we have a skill score, we have an attribute that's associated with that skill, and we have a skill base. And the skill base is the bonus that will be applied to a skill roll for that skill. And at the moment you can also see another number in here, and that's actually the stat value for dex or for tech or for will, whatever the stat is in here, and that's just a field that will be hidden shortly once I finish walking you through how we set this up. So we have a few things that need to happen here. Firstly, when a stat is assigned to a skill, or when the stat is changed or updated, we need to go and pull the stat score into the skill. So if I assign dexterity as the stat for the concentration skill, I need to go and get the current dexterity score and assign it to the stat score for this skill. The next thing we want to do is whenever the skill score changes, we want to update the calculation for the skill base. So if I improve my concentration from 4 to 5, I want to recalculate the skill base and improve that, in this example, from 12 to 13. Now, as well, anytime the stat changes, we want to do that same calculation. So when dex changes, we want to recalculate the skill base. And the other part we want to do is, if the values here on the character sheet change, so if my current EMP skill, or my current luck skill, or my current will skill, whatever those skills are, if they change, I want to update every skill that uses those that stat, and so update the stored value and then also recalculate the skill base. And so there's quite a few things going on here, and we're going to walk through the code that does that. So I'm here in my skill detail, and the first thing I've done is I've created a hidden field here, and at the moment it's not hidden, but it will become hidden, and I'll also move it to the back. So I'll send it to the back once I've hidden it, and that way it just won't interfere with the user in any way when they're trying to add or edit data in here. Alright, so I'm going to start with the drop-down list, and there's quite a bit of things happening here, but I've commented them all. So the first thing is we run an onInit, and that's so onInit will occur the first time that tab is opened or that skill list is displayed. It will run it, and it'll do that the first time every session. And we do this so that the calculations are refreshed at the start of the session, just in case there's any errors for some reason. So the way we do that is onInit, we run the onValueChange function. So onValueChange function, the first thing it does is we run window.getDatabaseNode, which when you run on the character sheet will identify the character sheet, and running it on the skill also identifies the skill. So we get something like carsheet.node 001 dot body skill dot skill 002. Now note when we run nodewin.getPath, that will convert that database value that's been retrieved. It will convert it just to a straight path, which is just easier for me to manipulate. The next thing we're going to do is get the current value of skill stat. Now skill stat is the stat name, so dex, cool, tech, will, int, whatever that is, and it's a text string. And in addition, the first letter of that text string is in caps. And what we want to do, because our database we've stored it all in lowercase, what we want to do is convert that to a all lower. So capital D, lowercase ex will become lowercase dex. And then we're also going to append underscore current to its value, because that's where we actually store the value for the dex or the M or the luck. So some of those stats have a max value and a current value. So we're always working with the current value. The next thing we're going to do is walk up the tree. So when we got our node win, when we collected the node win, it was actually finding the node win for, sorry, it's finding the database node for the skill. Now we want to walk back up the tree 2 levels and get to the character sheet, and then we're going to get the value of character sheet and then the skill current, or the stat current score. So db get value, mstat path, which is the new path, which we've walked up twice, gone up 2 nodes, and then stat will be something like dex underscore current or int underscore current. So we're going to get that value. The next thing that we do is we set the value of a hidden field, which is called skill stat score, with the number retrieved for that stat. The next thing that we do is we get the value of that skill stat score, and we're just going to store it as a new variable called nstat. We're going to get the current skill score and store it as variable nskill. Then we're going to sum those two together as a variable called nskillBase. We're then going to set the value of our skill underscore base, which is our actual database field. We're going to use our variable nskillBase, which is the sum of the skill score and the stat score, and we're going to set that value into that field. And that's a visible field that the user can interact with. Then the next part is a bit more advanced. This is when we're going to add a handler. This is the database handler. So what we've got here is anytime the stat score, or the stat current score, so dex underscore current or int underscore current, tech underscore current, whenever that field changes, so on update, we're going to run another function called update stat score. And we have this function here. So what this does is it kind of does it from the reverse end. So when the stat score is updated, we then want to go through pretty similar routine to what we've done up here, and we want to go through and update every one of our skills and refresh the skill stat. We want to, sorry, lots of late night videos. What we're trying to do here is go from the opposite end. So when the stat is updated, we want to then go through all of the skills, use that stat, and refresh the values in there. And we can see I've commented what each of those does. So that's the first step, and that's actually doing 2 things. So it's actually retrieving that, it's actually storing a value in our hidden field when the stat is selected from the drop-down list, but it's also setting up the add handler, which means that anytime the score of the stat changes, so we improve our stat, if our cool increases or decreases, then it's going to then go and update all the skills. So the next field that we want to do is the hidden field, and here we're basically running just a slightly cut down version of the same scripts. So I don't need to run the add handler here, and I don't need to do every single one of those queries. So but there's nothing new in here. All of these lines of code are taken from the other one. I've just removed the things that are unnecessary. So what this does here is anytime this score changes, and this score can change whenever a stat changes and the add handler runs, or whenever the drop-down list selects a new stat, then this value here will change. And what it will do is it'll sum this value, and it'll sum this value, and it'll write it to that value. And we're going to do the same here. So this red box here is our skill score. So anytime our skill score changes, increases, or worse if it decreases, it will trigger, so on value change, it will trigger this function, and it will basically go through and recalculate. It'll check this value, sum them, and write them to our final value. So let's go and watch this in action. What we can see here in our character sheet, so dance uses dex. If I change dex here, if I change it to say use tech, it's gone from an 8 to a 7. So we'll change it back. You can see here that the stat score for tech is 7. We'll go and check it over here. Tech is 7. And dex is 8. So let's change our dance. Instead of using tech and having a score of 7, we're going to change it to dex. And we can see that dance now has a score of 8. And because the skill score is 0, we have 8 plus 0, our skill base is 8. So the next thing that we're going to try and change is we'll give ourselves a dance skill score of 2, and we now have a skill base of 10. And the last thing that we want to test is we've got a whole bunch of skills here that use dex, right? So contortionist uses dex, and it's got a value of 8, and dance uses dex, it's got a value of 10 because we've got a skill score here. Let's go and improve our dex from 8 to 9 and see what happens. So it's 8 currently. Increase it to 9, and we'll come back to our abilities tab here. And dance is now 11. So it's 9 plus 2 is 11. And contortionist, instead of being 8, is now 9. So it's quite a few lines of code there, but they're all very straightforward, and all of them are lines of code that you will use and reuse many, many, many times when working with trying to create a rule set or a character sheet or just doing an extension. Thanks for watching, and I hope you're getting some good value out of this.